When are you planning your first stream then? Like
Well,
first
I was
official
gonna do
stream,
it
I guess.
tonight, but given how difficult this has been, I can do it tonight. I'll just have to make it a different stream because I don't want this stream to see the light of day. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna.
You don't want this to represent your brand?
Yeah, no. Look, listen. I get a lot of criticism on Instagram for people saying like, "You're so lame. You don't even make any content." And I'm like, I'm not planning on doing this for a job. This is like, this is like a hobby. I already have a job. I don't need.
Yeah.
So I'm not planning. I'm planning on doing this for like a weekend type of thing. Like, every Saturday night, get on and maybe I'll edit some clips and put it on Instagram. But it's certainly not going to become a full-time thing.
For sure. But people expect that like Mr. Beast level of quality.
Oh, I know.
Jeez.
Whenever you do anything, they're like, "Oh, you don't even have a $5,000 microphone, so I don't even know what you're talking."
Yes.
Well, I bought this microphone because there's another organization that I'm part of that wanted to start recording podcasts from home. And I used to just do everything through my headphone speaker, and that was not going to cut it for this podcast. So I bought it off Facebook Marketplace, and I got it from this kid who looked like he was 14. You know how on Facebook Marketplace you never really know who you're dealing with until you show up?
Sure, yeah.
So I go to this guy's house, and turns out it's this 14-year-old kid who we exchange the goods and the money, and then I walk away. But then as I'm walking away, I notice that this kid has an ankle monitor on. And I'm kind of like, why would a 14-year-old kid have an ankle monitor? Holy crap. And he was this like Pillsbury Doughboy looking kid. I don't know. This just did not scream criminal mastermind to me, but
well, clearly not. He got caught.
Well, yeah, I know.
Right?
But like as I was walking away, I was like, well, it's too late to back out, and now I kind of feel like this thing might be stolen. But
yeah,
I don't know.
That's too bad. That's an awkward situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Totally.
It's typical Facebook Marketplace experience, right?
What state are you from?
Utah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I live.
Is that where the video was filmed? The classic.
Yeah. So that's at the university that I attended, which I don't really go to campus very much anymore because I'm in my last semester doing my student teaching. So everything is either online or in the classroom that I teach in. But yeah, back then I was spending a ton of time on campus, but not anymore. So I can't really like emulate the same thing. Plus I would feel kind of awkward about putting random people on camera.
Oh, right. One other question I had was, when was that video filmed? Because I just saw it for the first time today, actually. I think the one where it shows you like at the seat, and then the guy gets really close to your face.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny that you just barely saw it because that's usually how people find my Instagram page.
Oh yeah.
So I just made a comment on that video that went viral that says like, I'm actually the debate guy in this video, and then everyone kind of streams through that like a pipeline into my Instagram page. And I had so many people who were asking me if I was still doing it or if I would do it again, in my DMs and everything, that I thought, maybe this time I'll actually, because this is the second time that clip has like taken off. The first time, so that was filmed 4 years ago. Okay. And then 2 years ago, it went viral on TikTok, and less so on Instagram, but it still really took off. But I didn't have a TikTok account or Instagram account. And so I just had like old people that I knew from high school or, on the peripheral of my online life. They would like send it to me as a link and be like, "You're very popular on Instagram. I can't believe that I saw you." But I had no idea what they were talking about because I didn't have any of those social accounts. And this time for the second time, it's taken off now. And just for the fun of it, I thought I'd comment like, "Oh, this is actually me." I still feel passionately about what the thing could be, right? This idea that if you sit out and you have to debate both sides, it kind of forces you to have empathy for the other side,
Mm,
because now you are putting in your mental energy into trying to understand the other side, right?
mhm,
And it's difficult, I think, and I think that if more people did it, they would be more akin to say, oh, okay, I can understand how you can come to the conclusion that you're a part of, right? I really can. But also it strengthens your own argumentative skills because you've really engaged with the material of the other side of whatever
mm,
position you're on. So, like, for example, on the abortion debate, if I can really understand both sides because I've had to engage in both sides in a very serious way,
mm,
rather than just discounting them as like, oh, they're the other side is just a bunch of baby killers, or the other side just wants to control my body, whatever, right? That's just a way that we as humans can just kind of dismiss the other side, if that makes
right.
sense. But
It's
if
like a intellectual shortcut. Just, oh, they're this, so whatever.
Yeah, yeah, and so I practiced that a lot, and I discovered that I learned so much about other people, and I had such a deeper understanding for um, the way other people think and why, and the reasons that they believe the way that they believe, right? So even if I disagree with their position, I still have a much better understanding of why they think that way. And it's definitely not just because they're dumb or they're being manipulated by the media, right? I
Mhm,
I have much more empathy for the other side. And it makes me, have much less hatred and dismissal for the other side. I think
mhm,
too often the debate ends before it even begins. And I think that if more people did what I did, because I think anyone can, then we would have a much different approach to politics and um, all manner of social issues. As a result, we can be more human towards each other in politics and in public discourse, and I think that's something that's missing. But unfortunately, I get compared to what is it, Louder with Crowder a lot,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
uh, which I think is the polar opposite of what I'm trying to do.
yeah.
Because Louder with Crowder will have like a statement, some kind of attention grabbing statement that's like, you know,
Socialism is evil,
yeah, like
something like that.
socialism is evil, and then like people will come up and try to convince him otherwise, right? Prove me wrong. But that's like just throwing gasoline on it because everyone knows his position. He's famous on the internet, right? And all he's going to do is just record sound bites and pick and choose the ones that he wants and then put that online. But what I did instead was I said, you pick the topic and the side, and then I have to debate the opposite. That way the other person never really knows what my real position is. And so they
Mhm,
can't get like angry because they don't know if that's how I really feel or not, or if they can convince me or not. They might be preaching to the choir. They don't know. And they know that what I'm saying isn't intended to offend or target them because they don't know if that's the case or not. And so they
mhm.
kind of not really sure. And so some people will try really hard to guess what my political affiliations are, and they
They
can't
missed the whole
really.
point.
Yeah, like if I had a "Make America Great Again" hat on, that would be one thing. But the whole time I was doing it, I have like a plaid shirt and khakis.
Mhm,
You can't really you can't really tell from the onset whether I'm liberal or conservative. So they usually try to ask. They're like, "Well, hang on, are you woke? Are you this? Are you that?" And I always tell them like, "Nah, not really. I don't really like labels, right?" And then they have to try to figure it out, like, "Oh, you won't tell me whether or not you like Trump, so you must like Joe Biden." But I'm like,
mm.
"No, that's not what that means."
And it's so weird that they're, like, insisting to, like, put you in the box when the
Yeah,
whole idea of the experiment is to look past the box and engage with the person and just do the best you can with that sort of stuff. It's really interesting. You know, the first time I saw it, my first impression was like, oh, is this guy like an edgy debate lord? Like, does he just love drama? Does he just love fighting people? Which doesn't sound like it's exactly what you mean, but that's why I wanted to see your account because I'm like, is he just a debate lord? Like, does he just want to fight all day, or what's going on? So yeah,
Yeah,
um,
it wasn't because I just wanted to argue with people all day.
yeah,
You know, I can do that on the internet, but it was because I wanted to really sit down and have discussions with people and learn more about them. You know, and like that, there's this one experience where this ardent anti-Semite came to talk to me, and he
huh,
looked like a normal run-of-the-mill guy. Like you couldn't pick him out of a crowd. Like he didn't have like the neo-Nazi tattoos and
yeah,
the right. You kind of have that stereotype of an anti-Semite, but this guy looked like any other dude on campus, and um, that was the first time that I had ever knowingly communicated and met with one in real life. Because you kind of always know that they're like out there, right?
hmm,
You know that there's anti-Semitism out there in the world, but you know, unless you're looking for it, you typically don't run into it. Like I'm not a neo-Nazi, and so I don't go to those kinds of events or go into those kinds of online spaces. I know that they exist. I just choose not to engage with it.
hmm,
But so this was the first time that I've ever met someone that had all these really bizarre anti-Semite beliefs. And it was really interesting because it wasn't immediate condemnation. I wasn't just like, you're stupid and you're, I would just ask them like, what are the things that contribute to your belief in those things? And, you know, that's one of the ways that I discovered that anyone that has these kinds of crazy conspiracies, usually you can talk them out of it just by asking them to explain it.
mm,
So you'd ask like, you know, so you think that Jewish people control the media? Why do you think Jewish people control the media? And then they'll go on this rant, and then I'll follow up with like, so if Jewish people control the media, why does MSNBC have a giant Christmas tree in front of it every year?
mm.
And, you know, and they'll be
What
like,
was his
oh,
response
well,
to that?
he would say like, you know, oh, it's just to throw us all off. And, you know,
Oh, okay, so everything that disproves the conspiracy is also part of the conspiracy.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I had someone debate me that Obama was actually a Muslim that was born in Kenya or something like
Mm,
that. And you know, they would go through the whole like, well, you know, I saw this PDF on the internet of his real birth certificate that says that he was, you know, it was clearly forged and all that. And I would usually, you know, have them explain like why would, you know, because I don't remember Obama ever campaigning on a platform that he wasn't born in Hawaii.
mhm.
And so whether or not he was actually born in the United States is more of a legal issue than an ideological one, don't you think? And they're like, oh no, that's why he's socialist, is because he's from Kenya. Really?
Mm.
There's no other reason
The
why
cla
this could possibly, you know. So I
the classic socialist Obama and the classic socialist Kenya. That's a head scratcher for sure. But interesting nonetheless. How did that one resolve?
I don't really remember. I think I just kept asking questions. Like for the anti-Semite one, I just kept asking clarifying questions. It was like, so let me get this straight. You believe that blah blah blah, and then he would explain it and then be like, yeah, it's kind of silly, but I really do think that there's this cabal of Jewish people that are controlling the banks, and
Mm.
and I would
Wait, so
just keep
you
asking questions, and he would get kind of frustrated, and eventually I think he just left because, you know, he started the conversation with, I have views that a lot of people don't like, but I think are true. And so automatically I kind of sat up in my chair. I was like, oh, really? What are they? And he kind of nervously unfolds this whole story about, is anti-Semite conspiracy theories. And yeah, that I think that I've learned a lot about that perspective, and that makes me a lot more prepared to combat the misinformation around it later, because now I'm much more familiar with the material of anti-Semites and conspiracy theories, right? Because I'd like to think that I'm a little bit, the experience has allowed me to inoculate myself against it, because now I've already engaged in the material. So if a neo-Nazi, for example, says like, "Oh, the Jews are controlling the blanks because blah 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 blah," I can say, "Yeah, I've heard that already." Right? There's no shock value in it, and I already know what
Right.
to say because I've already put thought into it and how I'm going to address this conspiracy theory in particular. And I'd like to think that it makes it even less likely that I will fall into those conspiratorial traps in the future.
One of my closest friends actually in high school, he was pretty normal all through high school, but then through COVID, like something broke his brain and he like straight up became anti-Semitic, like militantly anti-Semitic. Like you would type that he's gonna like, I'm not even joking. I don't. Is your YouTube stream still running? Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe I won't say it then. Exactly what he said, just for your sake. But he said some pretty violence-inducing stuff about that. And honestly, like, I try the same thing of like Socratic questioning, I guess, to see where the beliefs lie. But it usually just relies on like one or two pieces of how would you call it, circumstantial evidence, and then like what's the other word? Creating a belief network out from that, I find. And I'm not sure if they can all be talked completely out of it
Yeah.
because like it usually relies on so many pieces of just bad evidence that takes so long to debunk each of them. And then while it may take you like a day to debunk one, it only takes 5 minutes for them to create some new ones. So it's, I don't know, it feels really hard to get people out of that line of thinking.
Hmm. It's sometimes easier to create doubt than it is to create proof.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So my pushback there would be, what would you say would be the difference between a anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist and something like an American revolutionary or French revolutionary?
Mm. So to me, it's I understand the premise, right? That one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist.
Yeah.
That it's a point of perspective, and in the American lore, we celebrate patriots who uh, arguably committed acts of terrorism, right? They tar and feathered tax collectors and destroyed private property by throwing tea off of the ship, right? That's kind of the classic
Yeah.
example. Um, but I think the difference is more than the eye of the beholder because of the relationship to the self. And I think that most American revolutionaries, they didn't see themselves as fighting the good fight for their own self-aggrandizement, or to have something better for themselves and not for others. I think that the revolutionaries saw their fight, the Revolutionary War in particular, as a fight for something greater than themselves, but also something that was greater for everyone except maybe King George.
Yeah.
I think most of the revolutionaries, it wasn't just British people in general need to go. It was the imperialism of the British crown. And I think the Declaration of Independence makes that very specific distinction, that their problem is not with the British race. The problem is with the form of government that oversaw them specifically. And that's why I think taxation without representation was such a big issue for them, was because it wasn't an issue of humans in general. It was a specific political issue that had to do with the administration of executive power. And I think that's what was the real calling card for people who were fighting was, you know, if you join this fight, you don't have to deal with the British Crown anymore. Not that you don't have to deal with people in general.
I'm not entirely sure that it's disanalogous, because if we were to give the most charitable representation to the anti-Semite, it would be that they don't want Jewish people as a whole to go. They just believe there are some people in positions of power that are making their life worse, and that they need to fight, not for their own vanity, not for their own narcissism, but actually to for something greater than themselves, for the race as a whole. I don't see that as entirely disanalogous with the American Revolution if you just swap out a few places and accept race as a valuable thing to fight for, which I know is not everybody agrees with, but that's kind of the whole point, where not everybody necessarily agrees with freedom over monarchy or anything like that, right?
I don't want to say that the difference is whether or not their treatment of race, because right, the American revolutionaries were definitely going to keep slavery around, right?
Yeah.
There's no question about that. So I don't think it was about one race over another. Although I think for the southern colonies, the issue of slavery was definitely a big calling card for their participation and commitment to the Revolutionary War. I think that if anti-Semites were that focused on there are key people in power that are making our lives worse, then it wouldn't be an anti-Semite group. It would be a political group that would say, okay, income inequality is getting too high, and the reason for that is because of, right, if they said that that was the issue, is income inequality, and we need to reform the capitalist system, or we need to reform the tax system in order to account for that, or, you know, input whatever it is here, it's never going to be it's just Jewish people in general. Because sure, you might say that there's a disproportionate number of people who are Jewish in the banking industry, but that would also come with a caveat that says, like, well, if we got rid of all of the people in banking, then that would instantly make all of our lives better. Because then it would be like, well, you know, are all of the rich people who are CEOs of the most powerful countries, or companies, are they all Jewish? No, right? Then it would focus on that element of it that would actually undermine their feelings of disempowerment in their own position. But instead, it's specifically Jewish people, and that's what makes them anti-Semites, right? And
Yeah.
I think that the replacement theory is the same idea, that their problem is not with just rich people who are making their lives better. It's not because of this secret cabal of plutocrats at large that are making their lives better. It's specifically just Jewish people.
I do agree. Like, obviously, I'm not a Nazi conspiracy theorist, so like I agree with everything you're saying, and I think you bring up a good point by saying that because it's not targeted to specifically people that are Jewish, that they would have a problem with, and then probably also people that aren't Jewish that would fall under the same criteria, whatever that criteria may be.
So maybe there is this religious element to it. You know, I was reading an interesting article that talked about flat earthers, as ridiculous of an idea or a conspiracy theory that is. You know, it's less about the idea of the Earth being flat and more about the community in which it forms. And I think that
Oh,
there's a
interesting.
lot of that to be said about the anti-Semite groups, that it's less about their anti-Semitism really, and more about this kind of feeling of belonging, that you're part of a club. And the article anyway, and I don't know if I agree with this entirely, but it's an interesting idea that as religion in America, as organized religion in America decreases, um, these kinds of conspiratorial extra groups, or groups that are focused on a form of media, right? So, like, there's a convention for anime, for example, that kind of organized social club replaces organized religion. And that to a certain extent, all humans, this is what it supposes, is that to a certain extent, all humans want to be part of a group and part of a social distinction. That some of these conspiracy groups are less about the idea themselves or its validity and more about feeling like they're in a club that's privy to some knowledge or distinction that makes them special or unique to other people. The idea that a human's greatest fear is fitting in.
Yeah.
As ironic as that is, right? Their greatest fear is to be the same as everyone else. And I wonder if for anti-Semites, there's a portion of that that's true for them. That, you know, I listened to an interview of a neo-Nazi who, you know, got into the group when he was young and then later got out. And he said that the main appeal for him, and while he was recruiting others into the group, was that you're someone who's an outcast already, right? You're probably bullied or you don't feel like you fit in or whatever. We can give you that feeling of belonging. And that's part of its appeal. He consciously knew that while he was doing it. So he's like, we don't target people who are already in stable relationships and have a group of friends, right? We go to people who feel socially isolated already because they're the ones who are the most likely to join up. And I wonder if for anti-Semites, that's a big part of the appeal.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point about the community aspect and the being special part of flat Earth. But I think it's missing one key aspect, and that's actually the relationship between religion and flat Earth, because there are parts in Genesis that'll say, like the four corners of the Earth, or some things that could be alluded to maybe that the Earth is flat, which makes complete sense when you think about who was writing Genesis, right? Somebody that didn't actually know that the Earth was around. So I do think there's like actually a religious aspect to flat Earth as well, that they not only feel like they're special, privy information, but they're actually doing it in some sort of like holy battle against the evil cabal. And if you look into the flat Earth videos, a lot of them do have like a strong religious aspect to it, which is kind of interesting. And as regards to anti-Semitism, yeah, there's definitely like a group aspect to it. Like one of the largest anti-Semitism groups for young people is this guy named Nick Fuentes. That's actually the guy that my friend likes, and the reason why I had to stop kind of interacting with him so much. And they're very militant, and they're all like, I don't know how else to put it other than like they're losers, because they don't really have a lot going on, and getting to feel like they're the bully, they're on top, and you know they're strong, they're going to fight against whoever. And also having a community willing to do that. And yeah, they get to feel a little bit special. And there also is a strong religious aspect to it too, where they feel like they're fighting the holy war for Jesus, for whoever, Muhammad, I guess. There are a few Muslims probably, but, or Allah would be more accurate. But yeah, it's a sad state for sure. And I wish there was some better option available for those people than that. But I guess that's the consequence of freedom.